ready to build resiliency, create a healthy lifestyle, and overcome adversity with a warrior mindset. This is Define the Fight with Mariah Prussia.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this fine Monday morning. It might be cool. It might be, not so bright outside, but we're going to bring the fire today because that's what it's all about. If you don't feel it from the rays of sun, you got to start the fire within and then bring it without. So today we are joined by the president of the Flag Family Media, also the radio host of the Steve Hallstrom Show on the Flag 1100 AM, and also former WDAY sports director. Steve Hallstrom, you know what? I see you in the hallways passing by. We chit-chat, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have Define the Fight on WDAY.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you, Mariah.
But it's amazing on how we start linking arms and learning more about one another when we have, even if it's short conversations. But today, I'm excited to have a longer conversation and learn more about who you are, the importance of health, the importance of your family, and what you all do, because I know you've done a lot of great things. You had different goals that you wanted to reach in the last, couple of months. And, that's really what life is all about, is diving in. So today we're going to dive in with you, Steve, and learn more about, I want to talk about like some of your current roles that you're doing here within the FM community area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm honored that you thought it was worth burning an hour of your show on today. So I'm very humbled to be here. Those who know me well know that I'm not really an out front guy, even though I guess I play that role most of the time. Certainly doing a radio show and leading our company, you have to be, but I love quiet Saturday afternoons, just watching TV or going for a run. And I like my me time too. I love people. I love our people. And this is such a major motivator for me, is to try to build a company where people would want to come to work, want to be connected, that they would choose to build their career here is a real privilege and an honor. So I love our people. I love people and pray for God to give me that heart, that I would be a lover of people. But I am somewhat of I don't want to say recluse. That's not right either. But I do enjoy getting away from everything too. So, but you have to, like you said, in order to be someone who is leading and to be out front and set the tone, you have to sort of choose your mindset and kind of get yourself going sometimes too.
Yeah, and the thing is, it doesn't matter if you're a personal trainer. It doesn't matter what lead that you're in. It's important to understand that we all need a coach, and we don't always have 100% or 110% motivation of let's go, let's hit the road running.
Right.
We have moments where it's like, man, I really don't want to put my shoes on this morning, and
yes.
I'm sure you probably felt that when you were training for the marathon.
Yeah. They say the hardest part of your training run is putting the shoes on. Once you do that, you kind of get ready to go. And for me, I'm very goal oriented. If I put a mark out there that I'm shooting for, I get very, very focused, and that does me well sometimes. And then there are times, like after my marathon seasons are done, when there's really nothing to shoot for, and then it's just, oh, what am I going to do? I guess I'm going to get on the treadmill here so I don't weigh 300 pounds by spring or something like that. But I love focusing on goals and going after things. And in the case of marathon running, it's been really about a 10-year process to be able to do what, praise God, I was able to do in early October.
That's awesome. How many marathons have you done in your life?
Yeah, so 11 is the number that I have done. I won a year, and then a few years back in 2019, I got accepted to go into the New York City Marathon. I had already signed up to do the Twin Cities, and then New York City I did it as just kind of an extra race I would do about a month after the Twin Cities Marathon. And I thought, I really want to take the opportunity to do that. So I did both that 1 year. I don't know that I'll ever do that again, and I haven't since.
I did a marathon once. Okay, so crazy story is I was more so like, hey, Mariah, I'll do this self-defense seminar with you if you run the Fargo Marathon with me.
Okay.
Needless to say, there was 5 or 6 weeks before the marathon. So what we did is we were at a show out in Minnesota, drove back, got back probably around 1 o'clock in the morning, and then the race is the same day, right?
Oh.
So you're going on little sleep. The most that I had trained was 12 hours. Or 12 miles, not 12 hours, 12 total miles for the longest run for the marathon.
Oh, my.
But it just goes to show mindset, the adrenaline, and being around people. But here's the crazy thing, Steve.
Well, and you're in unbelievable shape. I don't know how old you are, but you've got the fitness level of a 16-year-old. So I'm not surprised by any of this, but most of us would be in the hospital the next day, just so you know.
Well, I will just say this. I'm glad we had a self-defense seminar the next day because it definitely helped with muscle soreness.
Oh.
But here's the thing is, I don't think we necessarily ran a full marathon. I just want to make sure. I was probably supposed to take that to my grave, but we got there a little late. So we're leaving right after the full marathons in with a half marathoner. So we're trying to follow all of the different signs on the road, which direction to go.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden, I'm looking over and he's looking at me and I'm like, yeah, we shouldn't be first. Here comes the bikes. And here comes the Kenyans. They're passing us. I'm like, so we basically shaved off a mile or two in regards to the marathon.
You know what? And you could have taken that secret to your grave and nobody would have known. Well, 25, 26, whatever it is, it's still very impressive. And to have only trained your longest run being 12, they say at minimum you've got to go 20 just to get your hips and your knees and your big muscles used to that. But those that are in good condition, I know you're an athlete, and back in my earlier days, I was one too. You're able to push some of those boundaries a little bit.
Oh, 100%. So you said you have done 11 marathons. How did you start getting into running?
Yeah, crazy story. So I love playing basketball, still do every once in a while. Grew up playing every sport there was and really active all the time. But as time goes on, you don't have as many places where you can compete. I don't know that it would be wise at age 57 to play every week on a basketball league. I don't know that that's Achilles and ACLs and whatever are just not maybe meant. Doug Burgum can tell you about that. Not necessarily meant to be when we're in our upper 50s. So I just started looking for ways to stay active. And it was about the time that I came to work here and knew I was going to be buying into the business and it was going to be a lot of stress. And I said, I'm going to need something to just clear my head at the end of the workday. And my wife at that time had done a half marathon, and she was the first runner in our family. I'm proud to say that, and she did great. And I'm like, that's unbelievable. And then the next year she didn't want to do a half; she wanted to do a 10K. And so she said, you want to do it with me? I said, I could probably do that. I'm in reasonable shape. Running 6 miles wasn't too big of a deal. And I really enjoyed it. And of course, race day is a lot of fun. You get people cheering you on. They hand you free drinks every mile or so. I'm like, this is great. So I did that. And after that, the next year, then actually later in the year, I said, God, I wonder if I could ever do a half marathon. And so I did a few training runs and did that. And then I did half marathons. That was kind of my thing for about 5 years or so. And then I had a really bad race. I did not prepare well. I went out way too fast, just young and dumb in running, didn't know what I was doing. And I ended up doing the walk jog the last 2 miles. And I'm way too prideful for my own good sometimes. And that was, I just had a sick feeling in my stomach. I'm like, I am not going to finish my year that way. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to start training for a full in the fall, because it was the spring when I ran the half. And I said, I'm just going to start training and see. And one of the things I've learned over time is that a good rule of life is go until you can't. When something seems like there's no way we're going to do this, well, go until you can't. But don't give up before you really can't, because most of the time, if you set your mind to it, you'll be able to do it. And that's served me really well in life and business and a lot of things. So I said, I'm just going to keep going here after the half and start doing some longer runs. And went online, had no idea what I was doing, but researched some stuff online, found a little training program, and sure enough, I made it. And under 5 hours, I was really excited that I was upright at the end. And I'd set a goal of making it under 5 hours. And at that time, I was in my upper 40s. And so I said, for being 46 years old, I feel like I did pretty good. And that's kind of how the whole thing started. So my wife is she gets all the credit or all the blame, however you want to look at it.
And now your last marathon, you had a different goal. So what was your goal for your last marathon?
Yeah.
And I know you nailed it.
Yeah, I did. Again, praise God. It was a really, really special day. 10 years in the making. As I mentioned, ran the first marathon in under 5 hours. And I just enjoyed the feeling of training and that feeling of coming across the line and having done something hard. Man, it was great. I could have a steak and half a bottle of wine that night. I didn't feel bad about it. And you start looking good. You feel good. You want to call your mom and get better sleep. It all works together, right? Wealth or health is really holistic. And so I said, I wonder if I could go under 450. And I took 15 minutes off that second year. And it just kind of became this steady, like, let's try to hit the next thing. And pretty soon could I make it under 4.5? And then I finally did that. And every year, thankfully, I was able to hit those goals and set those personal records along the way. And then last year, I got into New York City again, the second time I got a chance to run that race. And I had run 4:07 the year before, and I really wanted to break 4 hours, and I couldn't. New York City is a tough course, a lot of hills. You don't think so, a lot of hills. Big bridges, a mile up and a mile down. They're pretty steep grade. My quads just weren't ready for it. My legs were burning really hard at the end. I thought I had trained for the hills, but I hadn't trained for the pounding as much as I got. So I went in 4:04 last year in New York City. And I thought, well, if I can do that and take up another 3-4 minutes, I'll be right there. So I set a goal of breaking 4 hours for the first time and was able to do that. 3:59:10 I ran in the Twin Cities Marathon this year in October. So it was a super special feeling. I cried like for an hour afterwards, and I'm going to get choked up if I think about it now. But just to have worked so hard, and Saturday night, you got those long training runs coming up, and it's like, okay, you could go out and have a beer and a pizza with friends or whatever, but nope, I'm going to stay home, have spaghetti and water or whatever, and just all the sacrifices you make. It is a part-time job, no doubt. I couldn't have done it if I had young kids. So thank goodness our kids are grown and moved away now. But to have done it was, I could talk all day about it, because to a runner, those big goals mean an awful lot. But it was special. My whole family was able to be there. And my running coach, who is a big inspiration to me, who wrote my program, was there at the finish line. And yeah, just one of my top 10 day for sure.
Breaking that 4 hour in the marathon and knowing now that you're 57, right? The wise 57. What are different things that you had to maybe change or adjust within your training?
Well, I'll say first of all that I've been blessed with really good genes and good metabolism. I've never really struggled with weight. I think I'm always kind of naturally active, and I like getting out. I like still looking good at age 50, whatever. So I've trained really hard, like the last couple of summers. When I saw my training program that my coach put together, I'm like, is this going to be the year when I'm going to get a stress fracture in my foot, or my knees are going to give out or whatever? And other than a little mild tendonitis in the knees every once in a while, I've been able to really push my body hard. And one of the things that I would have never guessed when I was 30 is that at 57, you can look your best, your body mass index, your muscular development. I mean, right now, I've been in the off season for 2 months, so looking in the mirror isn't as much fun. But there have been times this past summer where I was like, dang, I'm still looking pretty good here. And my wife has always been very kind too. And I'm no whatever. So don't get me wrong. I'm not bragging about anything. But when you do those hard things and you get kind of those affirmations of, I look good in the mirror, my clothes fit well, and those things, it just spurs you on to do a little bit more. So I'll just say I've been really lucky that way, that I'm kind of a narrow bone structure. I'm not a big hulking person. That's just not how God made me. I think that works out well. And my kids too they've kind of gotten that, and I don't know that any of us will struggle with weight unless we really get sloppy about ourselves as time goes on. So we are blessed in the Hallstrom genealogy, no doubt about that. Kind of going back to what allows you to do that, I have gotten much better about drinking water and getting sleep. And I didn't used to always be that way. And then when I got older, I started getting headaches for no reason, and just learned that hydration is so much more important. Growing up, I don't know how you were, Mariah, but we played sports all day, softball tournaments on the weekend, even with 25, 30, 35 years old. And I never had to worry about hydration or really even what I ate. Well, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, if I drink water, I don't get these headaches anymore, or I keep the weight off or whatever. So I've learned a lot about that too. And Then I had a really good training program. I've got a coach who's an elite marathoner, and he's written up a lot of things for me, programs to help mixing in weights and hill training and speed training and things like that I never did when I started out. So all those things together, and just not setting limitations on yourself. Like you had mentioned when I said go until you can't, you look at these training programs and he's made them harder every year. And I'm like, can I really do this? And thankfully, just you're not going to the hardest workout right away. Obviously, you work up to it. But all those things together have allowed me to do things I really didn't know was possible when I started doing this a few years ago.
Well, and I think our mind quits before our body does. And that's
100% right.
And that's with a lot of different things. So whether it's sports, and you're talking about looking at a challenging program, and I think this is a lot of mindset today is, oh, that's too challenging or that's too difficult. Oh, I don't even want to try because what if I fail?
Yes.
And you're going to fail if you don't try.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest problem when it comes to, when it's exercising. It doesn't matter what age you are. We still need to work on our slow twitch. We need to work on our fast twitch, right? We might understand that our body's a little bit different, but when we take a really big hiatus, it's going to be more fearful than when you stay consistent with your regimen. Fair?
I think it's 100% right. I would say that as you get older too, you have to make yourself do hard things. I really believe that, for mentally and physically. I think as you get older, I can tell in the last probably 3 years, I've just had that tendency just to want to be a little slower, want to slow down. And I just call it getting soft, and I don't want to do that. So running helps me do that. And as long as I can keep going and try to set a PR by 1 second, I'll keep doing that. As long as that's reasonable, I'll keep doing this because it allows me to continue to do hard things. It's helped me in business for sure. There have been nights when, like any business person, you lay in bed, you look at the ceiling, and you go, Lord Jesus, how are we going to get through this? The ups and downs of business are really hard. But I think when you're doing hard things in one area of your life, you're okay with doing them in others, and you develop more confidence. Every time you go through some adversity or a trial, you come out on the other side like saying, I never want to go through that again, but in some way, I'm kind of glad that I did.
Oh, 100%. Because we don't build our armor unless we have to put armor on, right? Is at the end of the day. And it's the growth phases, you're going to have them, or life ambushes. They're going to happen when you least expect it. And if you've never had anything in your life, or if you're never held accountable or responsible for your actions, and then all of a sudden something, boom, hits you, and you don't have those strategies or that coping or the different components or the tools in your toolbox, that's when things don't go so well. And I think it's important for people to understand that it's step out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
We get too comfortable in being comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's, there should be waves. There should be, different storms that come through our lives. But the reality is, how are you going to face them? How are you going to move through them? And it takes time, and it takes different pieces to be able to navigate the storm, because we've all been there.
Yeah, 100% right. I think it goes back to your upbringing, how you were raised has a lot to do with it. But then as you grow older, everything has to become yours. Your parents' work ethic, their belief system, how they've lived their life, the reputation. My dad had a very good reputation in our community, and we knew that growing up. It meant something to be a Hallstrom, where I came from. And I carried that with me then through everything I did. When I played sports in high school, I think that was always in the back of my mind. It wasn't anything my parents ever beat into me, but like, I'm a Hallstrom, dang it. We do this. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it well. And I've tried to teach my kids that too. And it gets a little tricky because the way I see it, that can get into pride and arrogance, which is very, very dangerous. And you don't want to be like that either. But I think there's a healthy balance there where you say, look, God has given me gifts that he didn't give to everybody, and opportunities that he certainly didn't give to anybody. So I got to do this right, because I want to do my family's name proud, and now it's not my mom and dad so much as my kids. I want them to be proud of me and what I've done, and my wife too. And so I want those people to be proud of me as well. So I think all those things growing up, and then the people that you're doing it for, the why. And I would say I would extend that family to the people here at work too. I really want them to be proud to be here and to do what they do and get a chance to do it at this place. So I think all those experiences you go through, you talked about the adversity in one area carries over to other parts. I think that's definitely true. And I've certainly seen that But the tough times you go through, say as a runner, help you out when it's business time, or vice versa. And you just say, you know what? God is showing himself to be faithful to me. So why am I going to doubt when he's never let me down? And then somehow, some way, I seem to be able to do my part well enough to keep with the plan too. So in that way, I think as time goes on, we should actually get more bold in what we do, because we now have that experience. We've got that belief, that confidence. We know who God is. We know who we are, and we know what's possible. And sometimes you have to try to, find that line. Where's the line between possible and impossible, and try to wander around in that impossible world a little bit, just to see what really we're capable of and what God is capable of doing through us.
I agree 100%, because you know what? At the end of the day, there's infinite possibilities, but we have to be willing to make sure that we're taking action towards them. You've got older adults that are pushing harder when it comes to health and fitness, and then you have the younger generation that is actually kind of moving away from it. And that's a scary, pendulum to look at.
Yeah, I have thought a lot about the family in the last few years, because in my mind, you can look back at just about any ill that a society has and trace it back to lack of male leadership in the home. I'm a little traditional that way, and I don't mean to downplay the role of a mom, but there are certain things that I believe that children need from the dad, that authority figure in the home. And one of the things I think as men that we have been way too soft on is we have, for whatever reason, we have allowed our kids to, we want to be their friend instead of their parent way too often. And so we want to give them things, and that's natural, and we all do. But give them things instead of giving them our time and our involvement. And, I was a bad dad this year. I didn't take parenting seriously, so I'm going to give you a lot of gifts on the holidays. Or, my son seems to be happy when he's gaming, for hours at a time. And most kids are going to feel happy to do that. But, my next door neighbor has a bunch of young kids, and they're out. It doesn't matter how nasty the weather is. He's kicked them outside. They're all playing in the yard, digging a hole and filling it back in, just doing whatever. And I feel like that's where, as adults and parents, and I'll look to men specifically, that we've allowed our kids to get soft physically and to have a lot of time, screen time, instead of outside experiencing lifetime. And how many of us have great memories of when we were young, just like being outside and having to figure something out to do because we didn't have phones, we didn't have internet, we didn't have video games. Well, we did, but they were not
Atari.
Yeah, right. It was a Pong, So I think that you're right. As we've gotten older, I think you start realizing your health can slip and slip pretty fast. So you start doing some more things. But we need, I think, to be better as men in this country of leading our families in health and taking our family outside for whatever. It doesn't have to be marathons or, running the beast or whatever. Just go do something outside. And a lot of people are good at this, don't get me wrong, but I feel like we've been way too lax because we're working too much. We're too tired. We've got our own mental things or our own addictions or substances that we depend on. And so because of that, we're fighting all these battles to try to keep ourselves upright. And we're losing track of how to teach our kids how to be healthy people.
I agree with you 100%. And I'm going to shift from the female perspective, right? So raising my children as a single mom, right? And having two boys, I couldn't agree more in regards to the importance of like the men in the home, especially when they're boys, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So I can say for myself, I know there's different areas that I've allowed my children to become soft because of trying to balance a lot of things. Growing up too on a farm, we had to be, begged to come back indoors, where now it's like, gosh, you guys have to get outside, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to push people outside now. But yeah, it is. And, I know that I've bought different things for my kids, right? Again, because of the fact that I may have missed out on some things. What I do know is there's different.
And we all do that, Mariah. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we don't all do that in some way or shape, but I just think it's a tendency for too many of us too often.
Oh, no, I'm just calling out myself, Steve. No, and believe me, I get it. I get it.
We've all been there.
No, but it just comes down to, I understand like there's a sense of guilt too. So when you're an active parent that is working, right, but then also to parenting, there's a lot of different things. We don't have the 8 to 4, the 9 to 5 jobs anymore. Everybody right now is treading water and trying to keep their head afloat is really what it comes down to. And that's mentally, that's physically, that's emotionally, and it's spiritually. And it's hard to balance professional, personal, family, faith, all of
really
those
hard.
different things.
Yes.
So that's where a little of the grace comes in. However, we do have to make sure that we start drawing a line in the sand and recognizing we can talk about generations and how the lack of this, so on and so forth. But where are they learning that from? And who is allowing or, checking that point of responsibility? It comes down to us, and I've brought up the point of the kids in regards to the stats. And, in 2030, that generation is the first time ever that they're going to have a lower life expectancy in history compared to anybody. So, if you're a parent that tends to give your kids candy or food or, that gravitation of like, okay, I'm showing love. You're making them happy for a quick fix, right? Because like, oh, I got candy. But at the same point, you're actually killing your child is really what it comes down to when you're adding all of those different things in, whether it's pop, candy, all these different components, it's killing their health.
Yeah. No, it certainly isn't helping any. And I'm guilty of this. I like my snacks and my treats. I gave my kids, way more than I probably should have or whatever. At the same time, I hope that we were able to balance that out with good, healthy meals and, exercise and those kinds of things. But, I have a sweet tooth, and I think my kids probably got that from me. So I probably haven't been the greatest contributor that way. So you just hope that other parts of it you got right in the equation.
Well, and I think it comes down to moderation, right? So it's like you're never going to have
Absolutely.
this. That's not it, because then what ends up happening is when you say you can't, as they become stronger and more independent, then they're instantly going to gravitate. For the most part, they might let's buck the system here a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Rebelling. Then they might dive in head first, right?
Yeah.
So it's about, you can have different things here and there.
Of course.
It's not about here's the whole Halloween bucket here, take it. It's all yours. You can give me the empty bucket tomorrow morning.
Oh,
right?
yeah. I mean, if you look at me, I watch things pretty carefully during my training season. But once I hit, October 5th or whenever the marathon is done, between then and probably March 1st, I don't say no to myself very often.
Right.
And then I kind of just get geared up to, by the time March rolls around, I'm kind of like, okay, we need to clean it up a little. Let's go. So we all have those times for sure. So
speaking of health and cleaning things up, what is your take in regards to now Trump taking on RFK Jr. and talking about making, America healthy again?
I love it. I don't know that RFK is the perfect guy. I am a conservative. I'd say I'm not a Republican because the Republican Party is a disaster. I'm a conservative. And I like the fact that he is talking about things where we rely less on government, more on ourselves. As the government gets bigger, the people get smaller. It's always been that way. And we've seen too much of that recently. I don't want to get into politics today, but we've seen way too much of government is the answer to every problem that you have. Government should be the answer to almost nothing other than how do we defend ourselves from foreign attack and maybe how we get the mail from place to place. And even that we can't do very well. So I'm really glad to see this conversation because I feel like COVID taught, quote unquote, taught us that the vaccine will be the miracle for everything. Just do whatever you want. Doesn't matter if you exercise, eat right, whatever. Take this vaccine and then you'll never get this disease. You'll never spread it. Well, now we know it was a lie. But at the time, that's what we were told to believe. And nobody was talking about, are you taking enough zinc? Are you getting quercetin? Are you getting your vitamin C? Are you exercising? Are you getting outside to exercise? I mean, nobody was talking about any of that. It was whatever, we don't care about that, but here's a vaccine. Well, okay, the vaccines have never been meant to be like the way to maintain your health. It's always been something you do as a last resort in addition to all these other things that you do. And so I'm glad that there's a conversation going on nationally now about how do we eat better and how do we live better? How do we exercise better? What kind of healthy supplements that we have in mass quantities that don't cost you anything that can you take to boost your immune system? I started taking a zinc and quercetin and vitamin C supplement right after COVID, and I have not been sick since. I've had some colds, And I wasn't sick a lot before, but it's been 3 years now. And I got COVID bad. I still don't have my sense of taste and smell. I've got maybe about half of it that I used to have because it got hammered during COVID when I caught that. But that got me seriously thinking about that. And, sitting in a sauna for a little bit. And my friend Vince Webker at Hot Spring Spas, I'd be glad to talk to you about that. But it's true. I mean, if you get your core temperature up, you're going to burn off and fend off things. Exercise does the same things. But Mariah, nobody talks about that because nobody makes any money on those things. So we don't want to talk about that, but we want to have Pfizer get rich at our expense by making vaccines that are going to come along and do what maybe half of what only God can do. And what we saw in COVID, I think that the data now, everybody realizes that there was a lot of damage from the coronavirus vaccines as well. That's not popular at dinner parties to bring up, but It's definitely true. So is RFK the right guy? I don't know. I'm just glad someone's talking about it. And I think Trump was a masterful campaign strategy to bring in someone to talk about that, because that's how you reach the suburban moms that Trump was statistically struggling with, because they care about their kids and their health and whatever. So if it caused, 1/10 of 1% of suburban moms to look his way, that might have been the difference in the election. So I'm glad we're having the conversation. I hope it's not just lip service, and that somehow we can take these ideas that are talked about on social media, but find ways to make them things that we can integrate into everyday life, because that's the only way we really make things happen. It's like this DOGE with government officials. It's great to point out where there's government waste, but who's going to make it stop? That's what I want to see. I want to see the enacting of all these things, and certainly the Make America Healthy Again thing is a big part of that.
Let's define what health is. Health was never really truly defined during COVID. The only thing they spoke about was COVID. You might end up killing somebody. You might end up infecting somebody, so on and so forth. They never once spoke about mental health. What does it do to mental health when somebody is put into isolation? What happens to the stress, the anxiety, the depression? The CDC has yet to update their website. They were doing it every single year. And when you look at suicide rates, especially in the youth, it hasn't been updated since 2022. So my question is, why? Let's go deeper on this. Do they not want to show stats? And it's sad and it's disheartening because, look at how much our mental health has pummeled. And what does mental health impact? It impacts your physical body. It impacts your spiritual. So when we're only looking at one aspect and we're projecting so much fear into individuals like this is the answer, the reality, it wasn't the answer, because people could still contract and people could still spread,
pass it along,
whether you had the vaccine or not. And I'm not belittling or degrading anybody who made that choice.
No, 100% right.
Everybody makes their own choices, and
the
I'm okay
COVID
with
vaccine helped a lot of people. I know that to be true. The problem was we were told that there was no conversation, there was to be no questioning. You're going to lose your job, your military status, your rights, benefits. I mean, it was, we had a theory and we had a belief. And I don't begrudge anybody for ever having that. I was, at the time, I was glad that they came out with a vaccine for this, and I was glad that they had something to offer, because I wanted my parents to get in line to get it as soon as possible. Over time, we've learned that there have been way more side effects and downsides to it, but I never minded that we had a vaccine and that it was an option. The problem is it wasn't an option,
right,
for most people. My daughter, I was thankful. The school that she goes to, Bethel University, was the only school in the MIAC that did not require students to get vaccinated to go to school there. And we would have pulled her out had they made, and that would have been painful, heart-wrenching if we would have had to do that. But we were like, she's 20 years old. She's got the rest of her. They've not tested this vaccine on any expecting women or women who wanted to get pregnant or whatever. That was never in the trials, and they told you it was safe. They could not have known that. So the problem was that you weren't not allowed to ask questions. You just had to go along with it because the government knew best. And that is where that's not politics. That's just thinking for yourself and critically thinking that we have to do. You said something I want to touch on quick about like the health piece. One of my favorite stories I've ever heard about this, WDAY TV, back just after I left there a few years back, they ran a piece on somebody who had just run the marathon like the year before or something. And he said, last year, I wanted to do something, and I got inspired by these people running the marathon, but I was in horrible shape. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to run and see how far I can go before I have to stop. He made it 23 steps, and he stopped. But then he went out the next day, and he went 31 steps, and on, and pretty soon ran a full marathon. It is easy, especially in the wintertime, in the world that we live in, to get soft, and the donuts and the holiday goodies and the beer. I love a good IPA and a glass of red wine. I love all that stuff I shouldn't love. It's so easy to have too much of that. But that new fitness center down in South Fargo, it's free to go there and walk or run on that track. It doesn't cost you a thing. It might be a little bit of a trip if you live on north side of town. I get that. But just little steps. And like you have been saying, the little things we do on the exercise side, it makes you feel good about yourself. I took care of myself. And then you want to eat a little better. You want to eat your vegetables and get your rest. And pretty soon you're like, I don't recognize kind of who I am anymore. And that's a good thing.
Well, and one step leads to another. And I think that's the key thing is, so as if you're an individual right now that is like, I'm scared to start this journey.
Yeah.
Start with something slow, right? Baby steps, because that starts leading into daily habits, right? So, Steve, I want to first congratulate you on the fact of diving into a big goal and nailing it, because you knew what work it took and what it required.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's what it's all about. But then also to sharing your passion with the radio, on the show, and understanding the importance of health, because that's really where we truly define our fight in life.
Yeah, and how much time do we have left before I need to shut up here? Have I got 30 seconds?
60. We got 60
Perfect.
seconds.
Okay,
man.
so the other thing I wanted to say is when we get this whole mental health thing about depression and anxiety, go serve somebody. Go do something nice for somebody else. Exercise, do something nice for somebody else. Think of others. I started praying about 10 years ago when I took this job that God, when they bury me, the only thing I want to have anybody say is he loved people. And so I said, God, help me be a lover of people. Now, you got to be careful when you pray that, because he is faithful on that prayer.
And he'll send everybody your way.
And I cry all the time at people because my heart has been softened on that thing. So like when we do our work here, I want our people to feel special. When people come into the building, I want them to feel special. And that is, you got to get out of your own self sometimes, get out of your own head and thinking of others and doing something for others. There are not many guarantees in life, but exercise and serve others and you will be pulled out of your doldrums.
That's what it's all about, being an acts of service. So go out there today, define your fight, and help others along the way. We'll see you next week.